Hello. I've been doing this for a couple weeks now, and I was getting into a pattern, doing the same kind of pattern with the book, the review, and all that stuff. But with today's book, I want to start by talking first, because it is about the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian by Sherman Alexie, which I read in 2008. And before I get into the review, it brings up a conversation that I want to have with people about artists, authors, musicians, filmmakers, any kind of artist that outside of their art does things that are not appropriate and that we don't condone. In 2018, NPR wrote a story about Sherman Alexie talking about 10 accusers that had come forward with sexual harassment allegations. And that is the gendered story of sort of the criticism of Sherman Alexie. There's also some racial discrimination criticism of Sherman Alexie as well. And I don't know the details of these stories. I don't know the details of the discrimination in any of these stories, but I know that Sherman Alexie is now problematic. And I don't think he was in 2008 when I read this. And there's at least one other Sherman Alexie book on my list of all the reviews that we're going to go through. So I want to start the discussion by talking about that, because I feel like there's a lot to consider when thinking about the art that a person produces, when the person isn't completely something that we would agree with, or when they have actions that we don't agree with. And I don't know where the lines are drawn. I don't know if the lines are drawn in the offense. I don't know if the lines are drawn in other places. For example, people like Michael Jackson and R. Kelly. I can't listen to R. Kelly music at all anymore. I will turn it off. And I used to own the greatest hits and used to love so many of the songs. But because of what we know now, I'm totally uncomfortable supporting it, even in a fan sort of way, even just consuming it that way. And I don't know if I feel completely the same way about Michael Jackson's music. I don't know how I feel about any of the artists that I follow, comedians, filmmakers that have done things that I don't agree with, and how to deal with that. So I would love to have a conversation with people about that sort of thing. And looking at this review and looking at this book is what made me think of it. So I wanted to start off by saying that. But of course, I will do the review that I did in 2008 as well. And when we get to the later Sherman Alexie book, I'm going to talk about that one too. But I think this conversation is important. And I think it's one that we need to have. So if anyone wants to talk about it, reach out to me, because I'll definitely want to talk about it. But in 2008, when I read The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I wrote this about it. This book was a very quick read. I blazed through it on a flight from LA to Houston, and I think the speed is a tribute to the book's readability and entertainment value. It makes a very interesting statement on the flowing process from belief through reality to understanding, and how we deal with that process when any of those components are stunted. It's written for a younger audience, but will be enjoyed particularly by those of us who have already grown through the high school gauntlet. I read it, when I say it's on a flight from LA to Houston, it was probably when I was doing freelance camera work for the NFL. It's very likely that I was flying there to cover a football game, a Houston Texans football game. And I mean, with the way that I read, it's very uncommon for me to read a book that quickly. So I really liked it. It was a page turner for me. That might be because it was written for a younger audience, so there wasn't a whole lot of digesting for me, but based on the concepts that I'm talking about here, I think it hit me in a deep way, even if it was such a quick read. So so I want to talk about this book and all those concepts too, because I don't want to promote people who have done wrong, but their art is something, and it's in the world, and how do we talk about it? How do we consume it? And how do we decide what to do going forward with it? I'm not going to listen to any R. Kelly songs. Going to turn it off. Going to switch the channel if I hear it come up. So what do we do about this one? Thanks. Till next.